Hey guys, welcome back. If you're thinking about buying a 3D printer, I've got 4 things to consider before you dive into this hobby or business. So let's talk about it. Now I know you're thinking about buying a 3D printer. You're excited. You see people making all the articulating dragons and all the fun toys for their kids. But these are some things you need to consider before doing so, because I've had a few viewers comment that they were disappointed when they got their 3D printer. And these are the reasons why they were disappointed. First things first, location. Do you have a location to even set up one of these 3D printers? You need a flat, sturdy surface like this shelf I've got here. This metal shelf is what I'm using. Maybe it could be a countertop with a nice sturdy countertop. Whatever it is, you're going to need a flat surface, okay? Because these things, you want them to be level in order for your prints to come out nice. And do you have the space around the 3D printer? Because you might need to take some parts off. You might need to do some maintenance around the back, around the side. You might need to set your filament dryer to the side because you got to do work from the top. Whatever it is, you got to have some space around that 3D printer. And then what about the space even beyond the printer? You might need space to take the plate out, set it to the side, take the part off the plate, and then deburr the part, okay? This is plastic and it's kind of messy. You've got strings flying off the plastic. You've got supports. These are some supports that are in this part. This is a failed part, and you got to take off these supports. You got to use pliers. You got to have tools nearby and handy, and you got to take off these plastic supports, and then they go flying up in the air all over the place, all on the floor, whatever it is. And that's another thing to consider from a location perspective. Do you want plastic flying around your living room? Do you want plastic flying around your kitchen? Because that's what's going to happen. There's a lot of little pieces with plastic that are going all around. You probably don't want them in your carpet. You're going to step on them kind of like a Lego, right? You probably don't want them on a wood floor, because if you run over them with maybe a shoe or your foot, you might dent your floor, etc., etc. And not only that, even if you are taking care of the plastic in a garbage can like this, do you want a garbage can sitting in your living room next to your 3D printer? Because you're going to have garbage. You're going to have waste. You're going to be trimming the filament with these little clippers because you can't have it bent when it goes into the printer. Okay, you got to feed this filament into the printer, and it's got to be a clean cut. So those are some things to consider. Now for me, I'm fortunate. I've got a basement. I live in Michigan, and this is a concrete floor. You know, I've got some foam padding here from some workout equipment I had, and I use that. And it's okay if plastic goes on some concrete. You know, I can vacuum it up, etc., etc. But location is the most important thing when it comes to 3D printing, I would say. What about electricity? You're gonna need electricity, so I had to install a couple of wall 110 outlets over here, because 3D printers use up electricity. And if you get more than one, you better have a couple outlets. And you might want some tools to plug in if you're adding more things to your 3D prints, or you know, maybe you're sanding them with a Dremel, so on and so forth. You might need some more electricity. So that's something to consider too. Now, the reason why location is the most important is because of the other 2 reasons. And that is pollution and noise. Okay, let's talk about pollution first. Well, you're working with plastic, okay, and you've got a hot nozzle. It's at like 220, 250 degrees C, and it's melting this plastic. So what are you going to get? You're going to get volatile fumes coming off the plastic. Now, for most of the 3D printing that's going on these days, you're going to use PLA, okay, and they say PLA is fairly safe and non-toxic. However, when you can smell it in the air, it's probably not the best feeling in the world. You're like, I'm breathing plastic, you know? Even if it's non-toxic, even if it's not carcinogenic, you don't want to breathe it, okay? I used to be a chemist. I remember smelling all sorts of weird volatile chemicals at the chemical factories that I worked in, and it's just not a good feeling. So you don't want to get that feeling. You want to find a space where it's not going to get in your ventilation ducts, okay? So don't place this thing near a furnace, okay, or an air conditioning unit. You don't want to get that stuff throughout your house, okay? I've got this in a basement in an area that's pretty small in general. I haven't smelled these fumes upstairs, okay, above me. Now my kid's 3D printer, the X Maker, it's a little smaller. I can smell the filament, okay? It's up in a playroom for them that's dedicated for crafts and things like that. But, you know, I'm reconsidering actually putting it down here so we don't smell those fumes. As well as, you know, I could probably put in some decent ventilation, kind of like a large hood, maybe underneath this piece of wood. So that's something I might consider doing myself. Now, you could also place these units in a garage, maybe spend the extra time building maybe a small little corner, couple walls, an enclosure for your 3D printer. You got to spend time on that. When I set up this room, it took me probably 4 days of work getting this whole bench area set up. I also went over here and built another side bench over here. That was already here. I readjusted this shelving here. I painted all this pegboard in order for me to have this space, you know, this location. Otherwise, I couldn't have done this. There's no way my wife would have approved this P2S going into my living room or going into the kitchen. No way would she allow that in the kitchen. So pollution, I think, is one thing to consider. Now, the other filaments like ABS and, you know, PETG, PCTG, things like that, I haven't worked with those yet. I don't know how they're going to smell. I do have some PCTG. It's kind of like a PETG variant, essentially. I don't know. I haven't printed with it yet. I don't know if it's going to smell. I've read on it. It is non-toxic, but again, I don't trust things that I'm going to be smelling in the air. So that's reason number 2 you should consider before you buy a 3D printer. Are you comfortable with, you know, volatile chemicals in the air around your house? So reason number 3 to consider is noise. All right. This 3D printer has, you know, it's got kind of its system noises, right? Like the computer is making like beeps and sounds and whatnot. You've got motors in the nozzle. You've got motors on the tracks. You've got a motor on this bed that's going up and down. You've also got motors in this AMS filament drying unit. Okay, when it loads the filament into the nozzle, it makes a really loud noise, the AMS unit in particular. It's not super loud, meaning I can't even hear it upstairs, but if you had it in a living room or a bedroom or a hallway, whatever it is, you're going to hear it, and you're not going to be able to take your power naps or sleep at night. So noise is a thing to consider. Also light. Light pollution is another thing to consider. We've got enough little gadgets running around our house, blue lights, cell phones, chargers, etc., etc. This thing's got a touchscreen, and a lot of them do, most do. And then most of them light up the bed. My kid's X Maker upstairs, it's got super bright lights, and if it's running at night, it has those lights on all the time. I think for the Bambus, you can probably adjust the settings and turn off the light manually if you don't want to watch the print. There is a sleep setting here where I have it turn off the lights if it's not being used. But again, light pollution is another thing in all of our households. Now, the 4th thing to consider is cost. Okay, your filament is not free. It feels free because it's so cheap, but it is $15 typically for 1,000 grams of material. Okay, now, you know, $15 isn't breaking the bank most of the time, but you will burn through this filament if you are using and enjoying the hobby in general or running it as a business. Okay, these are things you got to consider. Electricity as well, that's a cost. It's going to probably run you around 2 cents an hour. You may not think that's a lot, but some of these prints can take 24 hours. Well, there you go. You're at 50 cents already off of one print for 24 hours. So, and if you're running this thing 24/7, it will start to add up. 50 cents a day, 50 cents a day. That's kind of how you want to think of it. If you were to run it for an entire month, you're looking at 15 bucks, the cost of one of these filament rolls. So it's something to consider if you're running it 24/7. Now, you know, I don't think these are reasons why that you don't want to get into this hobby. I think it is an affordable hobby compared to most things like golfing or snowboarding or working on automobiles. Those are probably way more expensive than 3D printing. As far as like the 3D modeling and software, you can find open source and free tools to build really cool models. That's what I've been doing so far. I haven't had to pay for an AutoCAD version or an expensive Autodesk version of software. So, but you gotta be willing to spend the time to learn the free tools. So those are my 4 things to consider before buying a 3D printer. I don't want you to be disappointed. I think this is a great, fun hobby to get into, and hopefully you guys can find that space that's safe, that gives you the area to work and have fun in. If you guys could, let me know in the comments where you guys have your 3D printer stored, and are you happy with the purchase? So if you guys could, like and subscribe to the channel, take a look at my previous video, and everyone have a good day. Later.